Hey guys, I'm making this video because I want to see what I can do to improve some of the problems with this bike. It really got me thinking. I'm putting around on the bike and I'm really thinking about like the potential that's here and the potential issues that I see on a regular basis. And you know, everything from handling problems to the engine itself. And you know, I was really thinking I'm going to take some time to really dig deep and to find what is really going on with this thing. It still has this wicked hesitation during the throttle, during aggressive throttle openings. It handles like no other bike I've ever ridden, and I want to get to the bottom of it. So the first couple of things that I'm going to do is I'm going to address the hesitation that I get when I turn the throttle. Now, this problem I thought was taken care of a while back, but I've been through everything from jetting changes to carburetor changes and everything else in between, and I haven't found a solution. But I think I know what would fix it. The other thing too is when it comes to the handling, I know the tires on these bikes, they're no good. They're no good. I've never felt the front tire drift as much as this one does. But I was looking at it while I was riding the other day, and I noticed that the wheel is not true. So I'm going to have to put it on a truing stand, fix that first, then address the tire issues. But I also want to measure the rake and trail measurements and the wheelbase and compare those measurements to other bikes that I've ridden. Because like I said, the handling is so bizarre on this, I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. The other thing too is I want to readdress the suspension problems, because I find it hard to believe that so many people own these bikes and they don't even mention the suspension, and it is awful. And it's not the componentry. Like I said a million times before, it's the dampening. Even with the ATF oil and the fork, it's still way too slow. And I could hit the smallest rock, and it is like, it throws the bike so far off its line, it's scary. So I want to address that, but I'm going to do that in a later video. The thing I want to address today is the hesitation. Now, I have the Nibby. I think it's a 27. It never fixed the problem. I did have a leak, and I mentioned this in previous videos. I had a leak, a crack here in this space art, and that caused an intake leak. And that is a very different problem than I'm having right now. The problem I'm having now is, it's similar, but if you're not used to dealing with these problems, they might seem the same, but it isn't the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this air cleaner off, and after I let it warm up and get up to operating temperature, and I rev the bike, it will cough and sputter, and that tells me it's a lean condition because there's just too much air coming in for the amount of fuel that's being deposited into the carburetor. So I am going to use starter fluid during the aggressive throttle maneuver and see if the bike continues to rev or continues to have the same problem, or if it revs out sharply with good throttle response. And where I'm going with this is I really do feel that this bike needs a accelerator pump style carburetor. I think that's the problem. The bike has massive compression. It's like 170 psi. And I think that has a lot to do with all this stuff. But the strange thing is that other bikes of similar size, engine-wise, say like an XR100, or bikes in that area, they don't use accelerator pump-based carburetors like a diaphragm-style carburetor. They use similar carburetors that you would see on a little two-stroke. And I don't understand why this one would need to have it where the other ones don't, other than one thing I was very shocked with on this bike is the amount of compression. I did a compression test on, I think it was 175. That's incredibly high compression for a 150. I'm pretty sure the XR80s and XR100s and the new CRF versions of those bikes, I don't think they have compression that high. The bike is also very jerky. I had mentioned this in other videos. Now, if I do switch over, I want to tell you a couple of things here. I mentioned these in other videos, but I'll summarize. I changed this throttle out to a quarter turn throttle. And I did that not because I wanted the quarter turn throttle. I did it because the throttle that it came with was junk. And the way that the cable entered the housing, it was clicking down. It was not a smooth throttle twist. And that's the only reason why I got rid of it. To be honest, I think the quarter turn is probably a little bit too sensitive, but I want to see if I can work on smoothing this thing out, getting it to run the way it should run, and then I'll address the suspension issues later, all right? Because I do want to measure, like I said, the rake and trail measurements of the fork rake angle. I want to measure the distance between the wheels, which would be wheelbase, and learn a little bit more and start comparing that to other bikes. Because, you know, I had this thought as I was riding around the other day on this bike that, you know, if these problems didn't exist and things were made a little bit more robust for better reliability, I really think that this bike could be a contender as a serious off-road bike. But I don't know until I really dig deep enough. I know the suspension is definitely holding it back. And it is amazing to me that so many people have videos on this bike and not even mention that, which is unbelievable, because I think what that means to me is that they just don't have the experience to see how bad it is compared to a bike that would be set up specifically for you. The difference really is night and day. So I want to spend the time and see if I can fix that and take it seriously. Now, this would never be, I wouldn't take this bike very seriously, especially when I'm comparing it to my race bike, but it would be really cool to have a bike that's this inexpensive with some strategic upgrades and actually be able to do something with it and actually have it perform more like something I would expect. Now, don't get me wrong, XR80s, XR100s, CRF 100, none of those bikes are good performers. The suspension is pretty terrible. As a matter of fact, this bike has much better componentry than those 80s and 90s XR100s and 80s. It's much better. In fact, it's even better than the XR200. That in 1986 they changed the bike from a more serious off-road enduro bike into more of a recreation bike in 1986 and later. And then they downgraded it yet again. I can't remember what year it was. I think it might have been the early 2000s, where they shortened the suspension travel, made the whole bike lower, and made it even more user-friendly for a beginner that might be a kid or somebody shorter. So I just feel when I look at this bike and I look at the components on it, if it was valved properly when it comes to suspension and the wheels and the tires were set up properly, I think it could be a real contender to be a more serious bike. And now, it made me think, because I'm planning on racing again with in the 250 or 200 class. It made me think that this bike could be a viable bike for a younger kid getting into the sport, or even an adult that's small, like me, and take it more seriously. Unfortunately, it does not have the zip or the horsepower that I would want, that I'm used to, you know. It only has 9 horsepower, which is my understanding. It's only a horsepower more than the XR100, which is kind of strange when you think that this is a 150. It's 50 cc's more than the 100, and it only has 1 horsepower more. But as much as the bike is very torquey, and the torque, I think, makes you feel like it's got more under the hood than it actually does. But again, I think I have to address this carburetor problem. The other thing that I noticed is that the pipe itself, exhaust system, the inlet versus the outlet of the muffler is night and day. I mean, look at that. That's got to be probably 5/8 of an inch versus who knows how big this is. I got to do some checking. But I think breathability is some of the problem. as far as its out, the way it revs, because I did notice that this bike seems to only rev just under the red line. You can't get it to the red line even if you wanted it to. That's usually a breathing problem. So, yeah, it redlines at 10, but it only, I think, it only revs to about 9,000. So I want to address that as well. First thing is first. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to pull out the air cleaner. And I'm going to get it up to operating temperature and spray in some starter fluid as I hit the throttle and see if it revs very quickly with good throttle response. And my guess is it's going to. If it does, I'm switching out this carburetor for a 27 millimeter, 27 millimeter accelerator pump style carburetor. I think that would make a difference. So for now, let me just get this bike. I'm going to start it up, get it up to operating temperature, and then I will give this a quick check. I also have to take off the air cleaner. So let me do that now, and I'll be right back with you guys in just a sec. Alright guys, it's up to temperature now. I just put gasoline in a spray bottle because the ether in the starter fluid doesn't want to work quite right. It's not behaving the way gasoline would. So this is without a spray. See how bad that is? It's terrible. You're going to be a little less aggressive, but still give it gas. See it rev right out right there. Revved out there again. It's super difficult to time the spurt of fuel with the throttle exactly, but worse, it's hard to get the right amount. But when I did do it less, I did notice that it did manage to rev out much quicker. So I'm going to take a chance, and I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. I'm going to swap this carburetor out with a accelerator pump style carb. Same size though, 26 to 27 millimeter, and see if it makes a difference. I do think maybe the breathing of this bike could be better due to this little tiny outlet, but I really don't think it's worth spending stupid money on like a name brand exhaust system for a bike of this caliber. So I'm going to do some experimentation and see if we change out that end cap. I guess the easiest way to check, it'd be loud as hell, but just take the muffler off and see if it revs up quicker. I did check something else that surprised me. It does make it to red line. It went to 11 quickly. So it does, I did it very quickly, but it does manage to get above red line, at least at a standstill with no strain on the engine, without riding it. So let me just dig a little bit further, and I'll reconvene as soon as I have more information.